Yeah. So, like I said, we were discussing Maxim 1. And so, what in Maxim 1, we begin our day with meditation. And to be in tune with nature is basically the whole idea of spirituality or the spiritual practice itself. And how can I be in tune with nature? There are certain principles and practices and techniques laid out. But one of the biggest thing which takes us away from this being in tune with nature is our own prejudice. Prejudice is nothing but we today will understand the topic in depth. And it is relevant. I mean, it was always relevant. It is not something it's relevant today, with all the events happening around the world. But this has been the case all along, ever since the humanity, is struggling for their power, their identity, mainly identity. There's always this identity struggle which happens in every person. Most of our worries are to keep this identity alive. Most of our struggle is to keep this identity alive. And to keep this identity alive, we adopt two instruments. One instrument is prejudice, and the second instrument is ego, or the self-aggrandizement. And this identity, there is negative identities also we use. There's always a comparison. Someone is better than me, or I'm better than someone. And this whole struggle is to protect that identity. So today's topic is how to live a life so that prejudice does not arise. So before even getting into the topic, there's one of my friend who used to ask a question. When you see a person, what is the first thing you notice? What is the very first thing one notices when someone sees a person? Hmm? The first,
Genuinity.
sorry, go ahead.
Genuinity is genuine.
Okay.
And does that person come up with a sort of an ego towards you, or grounded?
Right. Even before that.
I think I would look for similarity in how similar that person is. Like, what's their, and is there anything that, shared, like, I can share with them, I guess.
Common interest, sort of, right?
Okay. Interestingly, the very first thing we notice is whether it's a male or female. Observe it. The very first thing. I mean, forget all. I mean, all you said is right. I'm not saying they're wrong. But the very first thing we notice is whether it's a male or a female. Then rest of all the attributes will follow. But is it, you know, that is a faculty, a mind faculty to discriminate. It thrives, it survives through these discriminative abilities. So not necessarily discrimination is bad. In fact, discrimination is the most important faculty of the mind. So today, we are talking about all this discrimination is not really the discrimination what it is referring to. It's a natural, very natural faculty of the mind to discriminate. So when we look at the person, we say, okay, this is a male or this is a female. And this is like tall, short, whatever, the physical attributes are the ones which we are going to observe the next. And next, then we may basically make a judgment of that person based on the mannerisms of the person. That is also a discrimination. But is our judgments right? I mean, looks can be deceiving, but still, we conclude based on our past learnings, based on, naturally we learn what the mannerisms are of the people, right? If you live in this country enough, you know the mannerisms of the people who are living here. So that is a discrimination. But when it comes to, when we address someone by the color of the skin, like for example, then suddenly you say you're discriminating me. See, I'll tell you an interesting thing. See, all along, in our childhood, we learn the people who live in at North Pole, who live in igloos, the ice houses. What do you call them? Eskimos. And recently, I was watching a documentary about Eskimos. And if anyone calls them an Eskimo, it's a slur, it's a bad word. The whole world knows you as an Eskimo, but they don't like to be called an Eskimo. It's a discrimination. It's like calling someone with an N word here. I mean, it was interesting for me to learn why. What is that they are trying to protect? What identity they are trying to protect? The whole world knows you as an Eskimo. That's all the textbooks have written. At least for at my side of the world where I studied in India. But it's a bad word. If you go to their place, North Pole, and you call them Eskimo, it's a bad word. Why? My intention might not be bad. So what is happening is it's one way I associate that word with some inferior elements, and they say, oh, you are calling me inferior, and my ego is hurting. I'm trying to protect my own feelings, my own inferiority. But how does it matter really? All these things, we get too caught upon and too much worried about is because we are not taking a big picture of life, a holistic picture, and we are not seeing what we have to become. We're too caught up on ourselves with silly things. So the prejudice is also in a way of identity protection. But at the same time, I'm trying to protect something which should not be protected. And prejudice always arises out of setting aside proven or observed facts despite oft repeated experiences. So, this fatal attitude is displayed in order to preserve self respect or honor, and its origin is in the mind. It's purely ego based. I was talking to other group, a couple of weeks back, and I was saying, I was watching this TV series, some, from medieval times, where this Vikings and the Europe is trying to learn to deal with Vikings. And so there's one guy, one kid, and this kid was raised by Vikings. And then he comes back. He helps the king to fight Vikings. He gets the title of becoming a Viking slayer. And the king has written all his victories. He writes his biography because he wants the future to learn about him, learn how he dealt with Vikings. And all these victories are because of this guy. He saved king's life, king's family's life so many times. And there was not a single mention of his name in this autobiography of this king. In fact, king confesses with this guy. The reason I did not mention your name because I don't want people to know you as a hero. They want me to know me as a hero. See, this is prejudice. What is king trying to do? He's trying to preserve his self-respect as you see on the screen in order to preserve a self-respect or honor. So he's trying to protect some identity. Here, self-respect is also an identity. And these identities, these problems are so subtle. I can claim I'm not prejudiced against anything. But when it comes, when there is an opportunity, I'm always prejudiced. There's always this invertendo happens in life. The so-called virtuous men, good men, they can be good all 23 hours, but that 1 hour they go bad, and they justify that 1 hour for being good for 23 hours. And when they are bad, they're really bad. Similarly, the most bad person you can take, how much ever the bad they do, they'll also have a good time or good times where they can be really generous and be really good. So the mind or the personality or the character is always switching between the opposites. It's either this or that. It can never come to a neutral point, what we call a normal human being, normalization of all the human faculties. When my all my faculties are normalized, I'm neither this nor that. I'm neither good nor bad. Then I become a witness of life. And where do we witness this? Where do we become being a witness person rather than an action person is when I go into meditation. So going into meditation is a way of learning how I can become an observing person rather than, unnecessarily acting. I can choose to be good. I can choose to be bad, but it's within my control. I can choose how much I can go towards this, how much I can go towards that, depending on the situation. So then my heart tells me if that is good or bad, referring to the heart. So when can I develop this ability to refer to the heart to overcome all my lower characters, prejudice, ego, and you can name it. We are always trying to be what we are not. That's a problem. So the humility, bringing humility and purity are the keys. Now, what is humility really means? In fact, this is as an experience, it came for me in my meditation. So these experiences in meditation is really, we should not be looking at it as an experience. These revelations come because we become that. So the humility, to me, the answer came to my mind during a meditation was accepting the entity before you as is. That means no judgments. That is real humility. Accepting the entity before you as is. And then when that such a humility develops, where is the room for prejudice? There is no room for prejudice. Then suddenly the heart starts becoming pure. And when heart becomes pure, it brings that openness. And then openness creates certain freedom, free interaction. So even if some person is going against your interest, wishes, we say, okay, that's how much that person's heart allows him to perform certain, things in certain way. We can let go. Like that, the famous uh, situation from Bible where Jesus is tempted by the devil. Jesus did not say, what you're telling me is bad, what you're offering me is bad. He did not say, what I have is better than what you are offering me. He just heard it and left it because because it did not appeal to him, whatever the devil was offering. His heart did not accept it. He did not say, I am the God person and I'm going to destroy you. You devil, go away. He did not shoot it away. He heard it, he kept quiet. Because when there is a purity in your heart, your interaction also becomes free. It's okay. You can offer me whatever. I only take it if it appeals to me. Now, here there is no better thing or a good thing or a bad thing. So, without purity, there is no unity. And without unity, there will always be prejudice.
So
And
what
in the sorry,
purity? I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. What is purity? What do they mean by purity?
Purity is, like I was saying, my definition of purity is where I am normal. I'm neutral. The purity is always it's being neutral. My mind is neutral. My mind is not transactional anymore. So now my performance is based on my awareness, or my actions is based on my heart. And heart is always a better judge. Reason, it doesn't have this discriminative faculties working. It uses the mind for its discriminative faculties. So it says, okay, this is a tiger, so better I protect myself, the heart says. So the heart when the heart starts guiding you, the life changes. My approach towards things change. I might still desire a good job, but my approach changes. So how do I desire that good job? So that I can work hard for it. My heart immediately says, oh, don't dream about it. Work hard for it. So that's why the sleeper awaken, they say. When my inner is awakened, I see the reality, I think as is. That is purity. Right now, the inner is sleeping. So we are dreaming all the time, planning, anticipating, hoping. Oh, I wish this happens. I wish my boss likes me and gives me promotion. Oh, my boss is also from India, so he favors me. See, all these unnecessary ideas we are indulging in. But here, heart says, okay, you deserve it. You work hard and you deserve it. There's a difference, right? So that's why a spiritual being is always, ensuring that the right outcome uh, is always there in his actions. See, if I'm not the right person to do the job, I should give an opportunity to another person, say, hey, you do it. And maybe I can guide you I can give you a moral support. As long as the job is done. But instead, in the workplace or any other places, we play politics because I know I'm incapable. So to protect my own identity, I work through wrong means. So discrimination, prejudice, injustice. So prejudice is nothing but an offspring of superiority. But in my opinion, it is an offspring of inferiority as well. A prejudiced mind reflects non-acceptance. So when there is a non-acceptance, my next action, my indulgence will be always to call for injustice. In a way, prejudice and injustice are directly related. One is the seed and the other is the tree. So without the seed, the action doesn't come. So if there is a prejudiced based injustice happening in the world, because that seed is there. Now, how do we eliminate that seed? So this is where the heart comes into the picture. We start hearing that voice. It's always feeble. It whispers, but we must be ready to hear it. So that's where the meditation comes for the aid. Through meditation, we learn to listen to this heart. Like the other day, I was saying, when we pray, but we don't know how to receive the answer because our mind is so much engaged, even in praying, our mind is engaged. When do we listen? How do we get the answers back? That's why even in our heartfulness prayer, we call it prayer meditation. We mentally say the prayer, we acknowledge what needs to be done, and we meditate. Means we are waiting to receive that guidance. That's why meditation is waiting to receive that guidance. In the yoga, in the literature of the yoga, there are four fundamental, sadhana means four fundamental practices. And one of the first practice is called viveka. Viveka means discernment. Discernment and discrimination are the same. So it's our innate wisdom which says, okay, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. But what's happening is, though we have this discernment, our desire overcomes it. We rationalize, okay, even when a murderer is killing someone, he already rationalized this action in his mind before even performing the murder. Then where did the discernment go? Because this rational justification, the justification says, okay, it may be wrong, but it needs to be done. That's what the justification says. So in that state of mind, that person doesn't know how to retract, how to come back. So it is very important that we should keep referring to this heart. It is a very feeble voice. It says, okay, you justified it, but have you thought of repercussions of your action? So the heart always pulls you back. Heart tells you whether it should be done or not. Even in the last moment, it tells you it should be done or not. But, we did not practice that. So the justification wins always. We justify, oh, this must be done, so I must do it, even if it is wrong. Everyone knows what they are doing is right or wrong. So when we are impartial and open, the prejudice wins. It takes over. So we just spoke about discernment, but we'll in our future sessions we'll take up the fourfold element of the practices, spiritual practices. The next one is detachment. In Sanskrit, it is known as vairagya. And spiritual attainments, the 6 spiritual attainments they talk about. And then mumukshatva means seeking liberation. So all these are, the 4 fundamental elements of yogic practice or yogic practices. So here a few elements we are going to refer to, recognizing the problem. We know, oh, there is, a lot of this racial discrimination and gender discrimination, so many things we talk about in our current world. We all understand it is there. We all wish that it should end. But is it enough? It's not enough because there is no action. And how do we take that action? First, I must take that action. I must remove that within me. Every individual working towards it creates that egregore, that synergy, and it reflects in the society. I cannot tell someone else to change. I must change myself first. And always this idea of discrimination, I'll tell you, it goes both ways. I'm a superior. Okay, I'm discriminating. I think I'm superior. Or I think whatever, whether it's a gender discrimination or it's a racial discrimination, whatever the discrimination may be. And you come to India, there are so many castes. There's a higher caste and there's a lower caste. The human knows how to, segregate themselves, corner themselves, and then these prejudices flare up and say, oh, I belong to a superior caste, so I must be superior. There's no real reason. There is no real rational. The other guy might be, from a lower caste, but he must be the most intelligent guy you can ever see, most knowledgeable guys ever you can see. But I say, oh, he's from a low caste, he's inferior to me. Prejudice. There's no rational there. There's no rationality there to my thinking. But that's how, the prejudice is. Right? So this is everywhere. This is not a single, country's problem. It's a human problem. We all individually must address it within us. That's the only way. So the spiritual journey is all about that we lose ourselves. We become this observants. And now we start working upon ourselves. And when this openness comes within me, then I become free of all the judgments and discriminations. Then I see the things as is, and I always refer to my heart before I take any action.
Sharikan, I didn't understand something here. Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure, please. Yeah.
Okay, so based on this slide, I'm just reviewing. Okay, humility and purity are the keys. Okay,
Yes.
and above that, mention that it's only through hard work that we achieve goals. Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, you need tremendous effort. You need to be restless in order to achieve goal. So,
Yeah.
but when I look at humility and the definition of humility, actually, I sometimes I see it as an obstacle. Like if we define humility as like accepting things before us as is,
Right.
then that doesn't create the drive or restlessness or effort. How would you like work hard or be restless if you accept everything as is? Can you please explain this a little bit? Thank you.
Sure, definitely. Very good question. Right before this meeting started, I was discussing with Shilpaji, this idea of the moths getting attracted to a fire. When there is a fire, the moths come over, fly around the fire, and they get, with the heat of the fire, they get immolated, they get burnt, and they die. In the Sufi literature and in the Middle Eastern literature, that is a symbol of love, that I am ready to immolate myself for that love. So there is so much fire, emotion, a driver we need to create to do something. But Babuji said, I want those moths who can immolate themselves in the cold fire, means no fire. That basically means, to do something right, when I know that is what I want to achieve, there's not really any driver required. So that's why we do recognize this is a problem. So when I recognize that as a problem, then I must work upon myself. There's no good, really any other driver is needed other than me, evolving into a normal, a higher being. Here, normal is also a higher being. Normal means be getting into that neutral state. So that's why, what I was saying is, if I am discriminating someone, or if I'm feeling I'm discriminated, I'm being discriminated, is also a prejudice. That means we are giving in. We are accepting our defeat. Oh, somebody is discriminating me. I get agitated about it. I get antsy about it. Right? And then I get angry, and then frustration. All these things follow. But a matured mind says, oh, you are discriminating, the discrimination you're doing or the prejudice you're showing, I see it as a disease in you. Now it is no longer against me. So should I be worried because you are prejudiced? So now this empathy comes into the picture. That empathy is also known as humility and purity. So I become empathetic. And then I say, okay, my dear, let me be an example for you. But what am I doing? I'm fighting instead of showing empathy. Then I want to get back at you with all my strength and vigor, with all my strength and vengeance. What's happening? That peace is disturbed. So it's always the maturity of the mind, decides which way to go. So developing this humility and purity are the keys, because I need to develop that empathy and humility. Accepting the entity before as is me means I am empathetic towards that entity. That acceptance covers everything. All noble qualities it covers. So this ego-based superiority, I mean that it is it's taking away from the ability to discriminate, means to take the right action, because we have already made up. I have already made up my mind. So the both ways, me being inferior to someone and superior to someone, both ways it creates a problem. So what is the solution is that I might be greater, but the other person is not lesser than me. I can feel as much as I can think of myself as a great guy, very intelligent, I have achieved. But so how do we remove this ego-based prejudice? Open-mindedness. Now, open-mindedness arises out of conviction. And that conviction, it should come from within. I mean, the conviction is there, I'll work towards it. If we don't work consciously with that conviction, then we are, giving a lot of room for this prejudice, right? So we must work upon ourselves. That is the key. Without that, it's very difficult. Like the Jesus says, be a little children, be like the little children, right? Here, being a little children basically means I must be, so humble. What are the children do? I mean, they don't have any prejudice. They don't know what is what. As they grow older, they start learning all these things. So with the childlike attitude, freshness, we are always exploring, learning. There's no idea of which is great and which is less. That's the beauty. And all this is a result of connecting with this heart, learning, taking the guidance from this heart. And all this becomes easier. That's why everything, finally boils down to that. Everything boils down to that. Sorry, the bullets are a little off, but that's okay. Discrimination, there are three categories of discrimination. The first one is the discrimination of the correct type, and that is inspired by the heart. Then the heart tells you, okay, whether always when the heart gives you the wrong signals are very strong, the right signals are very light. And that's an indication whether your action is right or wrong. If I'm going for a wrong action, then suddenly the palpitations in the heart show up, even the physical heart I'm referring to here. It tells you, hey, there's something not right about it. And then again, the discrimination sometimes, like I said, it's always a desire based. Here, that means I justify my actions. And when I justify my actions, then, it again blinds my discrimination. And the last one, what is happening today in the world is a perverted and obstinate discrimination. It is wrong and it is foolish. It is injustice. And it stops the progress. Forget about others' progress. It stops my own progress. That pushes me towards being an inhuman. There's no humanity there won't be any humanity left in me, because it's not right. I mean, your heart is not accepting it, but you are going against it. Slowly, the heart stops speaking. Then you can imagine what kind of a human will come out of that. What kind of a human it brings out. So today is a short discussion. So we can discuss any points, questions, observations. Or, I mean, please do share, I mean, what are your thoughts on this topic? All right. So, I mean, I can unmute you all, but there's always some background noise. But if you need to speak, please unmute and speak. Or else we can actually use this time for meditation and prepare for today's 7 o'clock event, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah. So let's do meditation. First, we'll start with the relaxation, and then we'll go into meditation. So we'll do it for about 20 minutes. All right, let me play it from.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Heartfulness Relaxation and Meditation. I'm going to walk us through a very simple practice of meditation. We'll begin with relaxation for a few minutes, and then I'll guide you into the meditation part. The total meditation time will be 20 minutes. However, if you can only do 5 or 10 minutes, that's fine. So let's get started.
I would rather say guru, is constantly transmitting without being aware of this. And remember, before Daiji gave like sitting on, specific time, we did this Friday night, sitting with master on our, 9 p.m. local time. And I knew that, the guru is not sitting at that time, but, my understanding was that, okay, he's constantly transmitting. So my question is that, so what's the difference now that, Daiji is giving sitting on, specific time? Does he need to sit at all? I mean, if he's constantly transmitting, why does he need to sit? And the other thing is that, related to this topic, I was listening to Daiji's speech. Apparently, like, once Chatterjee asked, the participant how the sitting was, and then he told them he was testing them because he wasn't transmitting at that time. Is it like, can this be voluntary? Can guru not transmit if they want?
Okay. So the transmission is always there. I mean, there is no ownership here for the transmission. Number one thing we need to understand. Suppose, the air is there in the atmosphere, right? Who owns the air? No one. But if I turn on the fan, I feel the air more prominently, correct? Or if there is a breeze outside, I feel it more prominently. So when master says he's transmitting, it's only that just like the fan is turned on, the will is applied by the master so that it can be directed towards me. That's the difference when we say someone is giving a sitting, whether it's master or a preceptor. But the transmission is there all the time. And another thing I'll tell you, like I probably shared this before also. Like one of the member of Heartfulness, she attended a congregation by another system. And she came back and reported to me while she was attending the congregation, there is a lot of transmission she felt. And I said, yes, that is natural. I mean, why? I mean, her question is, how did I face the transmission on some other, system? That was her main question. I told her, see, once my heart is tuned, whenever a noble thought arises in my heart, the transmission flows. But especially if we say, okay, master is giving a sitting, okay, this is, what is a sitting basically? I mean, let's understand that. What is a sitting is, a master of that caliber makes a will that such and such work should happen, when people are receiving, that session at that time. Such and such work, such and such cleaning should happen. So it is beneficial. We are not sitting in meditation just to receive the transmission. There's more things happening in meditation. There's a lot of deeper cleaning is happening. And there is a required work is happening wherever, the progress is happening. So many things are happening in a sitting. We are not sitting to receive transmission. Transmission is also part of that package. Right? So that's why when we say master is giving a sitting, we sit because whatever the work needs to happen will happen during that time. So we allow it. But if my time doesn't permit, I can, sit any time. And, maybe, so this is sometimes when the teachers make this will, they say it should work, it should happen, whoever sits in meditation today. So that's why it's we regularly meditate, and also when master is giving a sitting, it has its own significance. But transmission is part of the package, like I said, but the transmission exists all the time. And whenever my heart is open, ready, we receive it. But more profoundly, if the master is giving a sitting, because now the attention is that whole focus is diverted towards me or anyone sitting in meditation at that point.
Thank you.
It is just a will. I mean, it's all the power of will, you can say. I mean, we can make that will. You know, there is an experiment. I was watching one video. These gliders receive instructions, through the radio signals onto their headphones. They did an experiment. The guy who is observing the glider from the ground tower can mentally pass the instruction and how the glider should turn, right or left, or go up or down. They mentally transmitted the instructions. There's no headphones, no radio signals, nothing. And what they have observed is the gliders exactly followed the instructions from the ground crew. How did that happen? So that means we are all able to receive the instructions if the will is made. Yeah, now they're not even spiritual masters, the ground crew, right? So imagine a spiritual master of such a caliber applies his mind and makes a will, and how much work happens. So this is a science which is proven, and we just need to adopt it and make use of it. I hope I answered your question, Nori, but that's a good question.
Thanks a lot. That was very helpful.
Yeah. All right.
Brother, I had a question about this.
Sure.
Question for that. Anytime I have done the master class, I feel a very strong transmission from Daji.
Yeah.
And I have done it multiple times because I really wanted to understand that. So it's amazing that Daji can put his willpower, and anybody who turns the video on, there is a transmission. So I guess it's not a question, it's observation.
Yes, I mean, that's a very good observation. I'll tell you something very interesting. So there was a trainers, train the trainers, the program which took place in India. And Daji was giving training to the prefects. So he gave some exercises. So in one of the exercises that he would transmit, he can also make a will and transmit from a point. So here, in what kind of a filter you apply, accordingly the transmission changes. If I apply transmission from a higher state of mind and a lower state of mind, all these things can happen. Again, it's an experiment one can do themselves. So in this, one of the exercise Daji gave to the prefects was, he's going to transmit from a certain point, and the prefects must recognize from which point he transmitted. And this happened almost 1 year back. And I happened to got that video about a week back. And I was casually listening to it while sleeping. And I did not know that he was going to ask this question. Okay, he said, okay, I'm going to transmit for a few minutes, and you recognize from where that transmission happened. But he did not tell us that question before. He said, I'm going to transmit and absorb it for 5 minutes. And the 5 minutes were over. Then he asked everyone, from which point did I transmit? And this happened, 1 year back, 1.5 years back. And now listening to that talk, I was able to recognize from which point he was transmitting. So I mentally told myself, okay, from this point he transmitted. And after a few minutes, he answered in that video from which point he transmitted. And that was exactly my observation. So you see, I mean, all these things are possible because now we are moving beyond the physical realm. So things work very differently. So now it's all open. Now it's the heart comes into the play. Then things would appear very differently. And doesn't it just not the prefix? You could have taken that video and you could have tried it yourself, and you would have recognized it. Because when we are open with our heart, the answers come from within, from deep within. And the transmission is also such. Whenever my heart is ready, it happens. But the will would have been made by Master before. So the transmission is constant all around. But for a particular work, these sittings happen.
So, brother, when you say particular work, do you mean at a given time the particular, so that then every, like maybe different videos, master would have a different suggestion, because that is the specific type of work that needs to happen? Let's say in current situation, peace is what is needed. So if maybe he put that type of a suggestion.
Yes.
So from that point of view, you're saying particular work that needs to happen, or is it for individual? Every individual has certain areas that the work needs to happen in that area. Therefore, do you see what I'm saying? These are two different, right? So
This is all what is needed, a need based, correct? So there are times where they can work for a global kind of a suggestion. Everyone should develop this condition. Sometimes there is any faults in that person when he's receiving should be going away. So then it works individually. But I'll tell you another thing. When a master works like that, this is my personal observation, and I think Daji would have mentioned it or Babuji would have mentioned it. But this was my own personal observation. When master is working in, with from that caliber, their subtle body, every subtle body works at an individual level. That means when he's giving a sitting and you are receiving a sitting, there is a subtle body of him working on you, and there is a subtle body of him is working on me separately. So at that point, the work which needs to happen for you will happen, the work which needs to happen for me will happen. Because each one's boga, or the impressions are different. Each one's conditions are different. So the work needed for me and the work needed for you is different.
okay, thank you.
And that's how it works. That's why a master of that caliber is needed. And those of you who are prefect on this call, you can try that too. He can give individual sitting to 5 people, and he can have the subtle body separately giving the sitting for each 5 individuals. You can try that too. So here there are no secrets. It's all open platform. Everyone knows what's happening. It's all, there are no separate secrets for a master, separate secrets for a preceptor, separate secrets for a practicant. It's all the same. It's all open. It's all laid down, written, proven, and if one is sensitive, they can observe it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Srikant.
Thank you. Thank you all, and we'll see you guys at 7 again
7 p.m. Yeah.
for the seminar. Thank you. Bye.